4:17 in this morning, and the crime scene on Beaumont Avenue smelled like burnt insulation and something worse underneath. The kind of smell that crawls into your sinuses and stays for days. Red and blue lights painted the brick facades of the row houses in alternating strokes, and a light freezing rain had started to fall, making the yellow tape sag between the wooden barriers. Nadine Achebe ducked under the tape with a paper cup of gas station coffee in one hand, her other hand pulling the hood of her grey North Face jacket tighter against the drizzle. She wore running shoes, dark jeans, and a lanyard tucked inside her jacket that bumped against her sternum with every step. At 47 years old, she moved with the deliberate efficiency of someone who had walked into 100 scenes like this one, maybe 200. She did not rush. The house at the center of the activity was a narrow 3-story, its front door propped open, its windows lit from inside by portable halogen lamps that made the interior glow like a furnace. 3 evidence techs were working the front yard. A medical examiner's van idled at the curb, exhaust curling white in the cold. Nadine sipped her coffee. It tasted like it had been brewed 6 hours ago, which it probably had. She studied the scene from 15 feet back, noting the spray pattern on the porch railing, the way the front door frame was splintered inward. Forced entry. She made a mental note. This was day 4 of a federal racketeering investigation that had just turned into something much uglier. 2 witnesses were inside that house, or had been. She never heard the patrol car pull up behind her. Officer Derek Sloan had been working 3rd shift for 11 months, ever since his transfer from the 7th Precinct. The transfer had been voluntary, officially. His personnel file at the 7th contained 4 civilian complaints, all from people of color, all marked as unsubstantiated. He was 38, 6'1", with a face that looked like it had been assembled from leftover parts, close-set eyes above a wide jaw. He left his cruiser running and approached with his maglite already up, beam cutting through the drizzle. You. Hey. Stop right there. Nadine turned slowly, one hand still holding her coffee, the other visible at her side. The flashlight hit her directly in the eyes, and she squinted, but did not raise her hand to block it. Can I help you, officer? Sloan closed the distance in 4 strides. His partner, a younger officer named Briggs, stayed by the cruiser, one hand on his belt. What are you doing at my crime scene? Sloan said. His voice carried the flat authority of someone who expected immediate compliance. How did you get past the perimeter? Nadine kept her voice level, conversational. I came in from Beaumont, under the tape. I'm working this scene. If you check with your sergeant, he'll confirm that federal personnel have been cleared for access. Federal personnel. Sloan said it like he was tasting something sour. He let the flashlight drift down to her running shoes, back up to her hoodie, lingered on her face. You got ID? I do. It's on a lanyard around my neck. I'm going to reach for it slowly. Don't move your hands yet. He stepped closer. What federal agency sends someone to a crime scene at 4 in the morning in a hoodie and sneakers? I was called from home, officer. My credentials are right here. May I? Sloan did not answer. Instead, he keyed his shoulder radio. Dispatch, I've got an unknown individual at the Beaumont Avenue scene. Claims federal affiliation. No visible credentials or identification. Requesting backup. Nadine exhaled slowly through her nose. The coffee was getting cold in her hand. Officer, this is going to be resolved very quickly if you let me show you my identification. I said, don't move your hands. His right hand drifted to his sidearm, thumb unsnapping the retention holster. You people always have a story, every single time. Got a badge? Got a reason? Let me guess, you're somebody important. That phrase, "you people." It hung in the freezing air between them like something physical. Nadine felt the familiar tightening in her chest, the one she had learned to breathe through over 23 years in federal law enforcement. She set her coffee cup carefully on the ground, keeping both hands visible at all times. I am setting down my coffee. My hands are empty. I would like to show you my credentials now. Sloane stepped forward and grabbed her left wrist. Hard. His fingers dug into the tendons above her hand. You're not showing me anything until I say so. You're trespassing on an active crime scene, and you match the description of a suspect from an unrelated B&E 3 blocks from here. There was no such description. Nadine knew this. Sloane knew this. The freezing rain continued to fall. Officer Briggs shifted uncomfortably by the cruiser. He was 24, 8 months on the job. He opened his mouth, then closed it. "Officer," Nadine said, and her voice had not changed at all. Still that same steady conversational register. "You are currently gripping the wrist of a federal agent. I am going to ask you one more time. Please allow me to show you my identification." Something flickered across Sloane's face then. Not quite guilt. More like surprise that she was not afraid. Most people he grabbed got scared. Their voices changed. They shrank. This woman stood like she was rooted into the concrete, and her eyes held his without wavering. And some small animal part of his brain whispered that this was wrong, that something was off about this. He had encountered hundreds of people in the field, and this particular quality of stillness was something he had only ever seen in other cops. He pushed the thought away. "Turn around. Hands behind your back. On what charge? Trespassing. Obstruction. Failure to comply. Pick one." He yanked her arm and spun her, and the lanyard slipped partially free from her jacket, the ID card dangling against her collarbone. Sloane did not look at it. He was already pulling her other arm back, and then the handcuffs were out, the ratcheting sound obscenely loud in the quiet street. "You know what your problem is," Sloane said, leaning close enough that she could smell the wintergreen dip on his breath. "Every time one of you gets caught somewhere you shouldn't be, suddenly you're FBI, you're CIA, you're the damn president. It's always the same song." He tightened the cuffs one notch past necessary. Nadine felt the metal bite into her wrist bones. Around them, the evidence techs had stopped working. 2 of them stood in the doorway of the house, watching. One of them, a white man in his 50s with a forensic pathologist's badge, reached for his phone. Nadine spoke clearly, projecting her voice now so that Briggs and the techs could hear. "My name is Nadine Achebe. My identification is currently hanging from my neck. I am the special agent in charge of the FBI's Organized Crime Division, Philadelphia Field Office. You are making a career-ending mistake, Officer Sloane." Sloane laughed, a short, barking sound. "Sure you are. And I'm the Pope." He pushed her toward the cruiser. "Walk." Then 2 things happened nearly simultaneously. The forensic pathologist in the doorway called out in a strained voice. "Sloane. Sloane, stop. Stop what you're doing right now." And Nadine's phone, still in her jacket pocket, began to ring. The ringtone was distinctive. It was the default tone she had assigned to her direct superior, and it played 3 notes before Sloane reached into her pocket and silenced it. But Briggs had moved. The younger officer had walked to where Nadine's lanyard hung free, and he tilted the ID card toward the nearest halogen lamp. His face went the color of wet chalk. "Derek. Not now, Briggs. Derek." Briggs' voice cracked. "It's real. It's FBI. She's SAC. She's..." "Derek. She's the SAC." Sloane stopped walking. His hand was still on Nadine's shoulder. For 3 full seconds, nothing moved on Beaumont Avenue except the freezing rain. Then his hand released, finger by finger, the way someone lets go of a hot pan. Nadine turned to face him. The handcuffs were still on. She said nothing. She simply looked at him with an expression that was not anger, not triumph, but something worse. Patience. The patience of someone who has been through this exact moment before and knows precisely what comes next. Sloane's mouth opened, then closed, then opened again. There was no identification visible. Protocol says, my identification was around my neck. Nadine's voice was quiet now. You chose not to look at it. Sloane's phone rang. He did not answer it. It rang again. Briggs said, in barely a whisper, "That's the captain." The next 11 minutes were the longest of Derek Sloane's life. 3 black SUVs arrived first. They came up Beaumont Avenue in a tight formation, headlights off, running only their parking lamps, and stopped in a diagonal formation that sealed the entire block. The doors opened, and 8 people emerged, all in dark blue windbreakers, with 3 yellow letters on the back that caught the halogen light. Then came the phone calls. Sloane's phone rang 4 times in succession. The first was Captain Morales. The second was Deputy Chief Whitfield. The third was a number he did not recognize. The fourth was the police commissioner's direct line. He answered none of them. A woman emerged from the lead SUV. She was white, mid-30s, with a face that looked like it had been carved from something cold. Her name was Assistant Special Agent in Charge, Dana Morrison, and she had been Nadine's deputy for 3 years. She took in the scene in one sweep, her eyes landing on the handcuffs still on Nadine's wrists, and her expression shifted from professional concern to something that looked a great deal like fury contained behind glass. "Ma'am, are you injured?" "No," Nadine said, "but I would appreciate having these removed." Morrison turned to Sloane. She did not raise her voice. That was what made it worse. "Key," she said. "Now." Sloane's hands were shaking. He fumbled the handcuff key from his belt and unlocked the cuffs. As the metal fell away, Nadine rubbed her wrists slowly. There were red marks that would bruise by morning. Morrison spoke into her radio. "Confirm with Philadelphia Field Office. Special Agent in Charge, Achebe, was assaulted during the course of her duties by a local officer. Initiate Section 242 documentation. I need everything. Body camera footage from both officers. Dash camera from the patrol unit. Cell phones from all witnesses." Sloane found his voice. "Listen. This is a misunderstanding. She didn't have visible ID. She was in civilian clothes at 4 in the morning at a crime scene. What was I supposed to think?" Morrison looked at him the way an entomologist looks at a pinned specimen. "You were supposed to look at the identification she repeatedly offered to show you." Her voice was so flat it was almost mechanical. "You were supposed to use the radio to confirm federal access authorization that was logged with your dispatch 2 hours ago. You were supposed to do your job. Instead, you did this." She gestured at Nadine's wrists. Sloane turned to Nadine. "Agent Achebe, Look, I'm sorry, I didn't know." And there it was. That single sentence contained everything. He was not sorry for what he had done. He was sorry about who he had done it to. If Nadine had been what he assumed she was, a civilian, someone without power, he would not be sorry at all. Nadine heard it. Morrison heard it. Briggs, standing 6 feet away with his hand over his mouth, heard it. But here was the thing about Derek Sloane that nobody in that moment could know. That afternoon, before his shift, he had driven his 6-year-old daughter to her piano recital at the community center on Vine Street. He had sat in the back row and recorded the whole thing on his phone. When she played the wrong note in the third measure and looked at him with panicked eyes, he had smiled and given her a thumbs up, and she had kept going. He had bought her ice cream afterwards, strawberry, her favorite, and she had fallen asleep in the back seat with pink stains around her mouth. He loved that child with everything he had, and none of that mattered now. None of that excused what lived in him alongside the love, the thing that made him grab a woman's wrist before looking at her badge, the assumption that ran so deep he did not even recognize it as an assumption. By 6:15 that morning, Captain Morales was on scene. He was sweating despite the 34-degree temperature. He spoke to Nadine for 2 minutes with his hat in his hands. Then he turned to Sloane. "Badge," he said. "Captain, Badge. Gun. Radio. Keys. Now." Sloane unclipped his badge. The sound of the metal detaching from the leather case was small and final. He placed his service weapon on the hood of his cruiser. The radio. The car keys. His world, item by item, on a wet car hood in the freezing rain. "You are suspended without pay effective immediately," Morales said. "Internal Affairs has been contacted. The FBI Civil Rights Division has been contacted. Do not speak to anyone. Do not post on social media. Go home and call your union rep. Do you understand me?" Sloane nodded. He looked like a man watching his house burn from across the street. They took his cruiser. Briggs drove him to the precinct in silence. When they arrived, Sloane sat in the passenger seat for a full minute without moving. Then he said, almost to himself, "She didn't look like FBI." Briggs did not respond. He was already drafting his witness statement in his head. The federal investigation into Officer Derek Sloane moved with a speed that surprised no one who understood the institutional dynamics at play. Within 72 hours, the FBI's Civil Rights Division filed a criminal complaint under Title 18, Section 242, Deprivation of Rights under Color of Law. The complaint was 18 pages. It included body camera footage from both Sloane's and Briggs's cameras, which captured audio of every word exchanged. The footage went to the U.S. Attorney's Office by day 2. The Philadelphia Police Department launched a parallel internal investigation that uncovered Sloane's 4 prior complaints. 3 of them involved nearly identical scenarios: black men detained without cause, black women searched without consent. Each time, the complaint had been reviewed by the same internal review board and dismissed with the same boilerplate language. This time, the review board's findings would be different. 14 days after the incident on Beaumont Avenue, the city received a federal civil rights lawsuit. The amount sought was $12.8 million. The city settled for $8.3 million within 6 months, without trial, because the body camera footage was unambiguous, and the city's lawyers knew what a jury would do with it. Sloane was terminated 31 days after the incident. His union filed a grievance. The grievance was denied. He was indicted by a federal grand jury 4 months later on 2 counts, 1 count of deprivation of rights under color of law, 1 count of assault. He pleaded to a single misdemeanor to avoid trial. The judge sentenced him to 18 months. He served 11. 17 other officers in the precinct were placed on administrative leave during the subsequent review. 3 were terminated. A deputy chief retired abruptly. The department implemented mandatory federal jurisdiction recognition training, body camera activation protocols with termination clauses for non-compliance, and an independent civilian review board with subpoena power. Nadine Akebe spoke once publicly about what happened. It was at a press conference 3 weeks after the incident. She stood at a podium in a dark blue suit, the bruises on her wrists faded, but not yet gone. She said this: "What happened to me on Beaumont Avenue was not exceptional. It was ordinary. That is what makes it unacceptable. The only difference between my experience and thousands of others is that I happen to carry a badge that this department was forced to respect. The question we must ask ourselves is simple. What about the people who do not carry that badge? What happens to them on Beaumont Avenue at 4 a.m? We know the answer. We have always known. She took no questions. She returned to work the next morning. On the day of his sentencing, Derek Sloan stood in a federal courtroom in a suit that did not quite fit anymore because he had lost 22 pounds. His daughter's piano recital video was still on his phone. He had watched it 9 times in the past week. The judge spoke for 4 minutes. Sloan said nothing. When they led him out through the side door, he passed a window that looked onto Arch Street, where traffic moved in the ordinary way of a Tuesday afternoon, and a woman in a grey jacket walked past with a coffee in her hand, not looking up, going somewhere that mattered to her. Nobody in that courtroom noticed her. She was just a woman walking. The light changed. She crossed the street and was gone.